All right, so in a stretch class, typically is usually after a spinning class. So people are already warmed up, but their muscles are pretty tight. So we first start with the rollers in order to work out any knots that people have in their muscles. I usually like to start with the calves, as every instructor is different. So for the calves, I put the hands around the hips, and then I lift myself up to put the weight on the calves, and I just do a little roll forward and back in order to release that muscle. And then I switch to the other side while breathing in order to release the muscle a little bit better. And then I typically start to get a little bit higher on top of the thighs. So the IT band is also another spot that gets really tight in athletes. And also in cyclists, I bring the elbow down, and then I have people roll the roller, roll on top of the roller until it comes down onto the knees, and then roll it up. Typically this is pretty intense and pretty painful for a bunch of people. So I usually tell people to bring their leg down or give modifications. And then from the IT band, I usually go into the outer hip, and then into the piriformis. So the piriformis is the little muscle that connects deep inside your hip joint, and that tends to get really tight. And then I roll it back onto the lower back. The big muscle, the QL, which connects the hip to the ribs, and you have to kind of twist to get that in. So you do a little twist, and you feel that big muscle right along your side, your spine. And that feels pretty good. And then you try to get both sides. And then you start to bring it back a little bit further up onto your back, bringing the hands behind the head. You start to feel a little crunching here, so everything kind of working itself out. It actually feels really good as a little self-massage. And the upper back gets really, really tight, especially when you're spinning because you're trying to hold yourself up on the bike. And just breathing to release it here. All right. So after about 15 minutes of that, then we go into stretches. Now, your body is now warm, it's released, now it's ready to be stretched. So, we start with the big muscle groups first. So, one of the big muscle groups, the hip flexors and the quads. So always safety here first. So a lot of people have really tight quads. And so, I like to do lunges, like really deep lunges. But some people, if you can't, I always provide modifications. And then from here, we pull it back and get into the hamstrings and the IT band here. So always keeping a nice long spine, getting that hamstring open up so the legs get pretty tight here. And then breathing to release it out. Good. And then we always want to get a little bit more on the inner thighs and the smaller muscles because we always tend to avoid those. So you always have the leg lengthen. And you want to open the chest a little bit more. So reaching up with the hands and then looking up, so following the gaze. The body follows the gaze and working with the breath to get a little bit more length into your spine and opening in the chest. Good. And then once you've worked the legs, we start to work it up in the upper body. So we start usually with a little break with the child's pose. Good, and then maybe bringing the hand behind the back to kind of open the chest a little bit more and get that opening. And a lot of times we tend to kind of sink forward onto the bike. Good, and a simple forward fold with the legs extended, always. It's always good. Now, doing it without the back rounding up the back. So maybe, you need a strap definitely to use it. The important thing here is to keep the spine lengthened and fold forward from the hips and not from the waist. Good. And then we repeat that with a little bit more intense standing forward fold instead of a seated forward fold and dropping the crown of the head down. This time we really use the weight of the upper body to get a little bit more length in the hamstrings, lengthening the side waist, maybe releasing the lower back by bending the knees. Good, getting a little bit more chest opening and releasing hands behind the back. Inhale. inhaling and reaching forward, exhaling, dropping the hand over the head, all the way towards the floor.